You're good to go.
Thanks. All right, so just a recap, we're going to be doing the Superduo bracelet with a Superduo button. And we'll start the class with creating the button. It's made with just Superduos. I have 2 colors going here. And then we will begin to create the herringbone stitch part of the bracelet. I'll show you how to start it and then how to add thread. And then we'll go ahead and attach the button and attach the seed loop to the top. And so I'm going to switch down to my camera so you guys can see the project. Okay, so here's letting it focus for just a second. There we go. So here's the finished bracelet and how it looks. And it's made with size 8 seed beads, Superduos, size 10s, and that's it. And you can mix up the colors any way you like. And you can also go with a solid color. Anything that appeals to you color-wise, there's no rules for that. Anything you like. I used a mix for this one. I get asked about these colors a lot. This is the apricot mix in size 8. And I copied the colors in that mix with different Superduo colors. All of these colors are available at Michael's. And if you have questions about what colors I've used here, I can answer them. And some of the colors I used are also in the PDF. And so my sample, my most recent sample here, uses a very cool color of size 8s, an amethyst. And it's got a pop of AB to it, AB finish, which is short for Aurora Borealis finish. Really nice. I'm going to be using this color. It's a satin purple of Superduo. It says purple suede metallic is the actual name of it. And then I've got this really beautiful blue, Crystal Magic Blue, which is a rainbow of colors, really gorgeous. And so that's the bracelet. The button and is also made with the 2 Superduo colors that I showed. So getting started, I'm just going to go ahead and get started right away. So the thread that I'm using is WildFire 0.006. And I'm going to be using the size 10 beading needles. To cut my thread, I'm going to be using some precision scissors. All right. So we're going to start with the button. For the button, you'll need about 30 inches of thread. You can go ahead and pull some thread off. And the button is made in 2 parts. How we'll do the button is we'll start with creating side 1. We'll set it aside. And we'll create a side 2, weave in all of the threads on the side 2. And then we're going to connect those 2 pieces together. If you were with us last week for the Puppy Star, it's really similar. The only difference is the counts change up a little bit. And I want to share a tip that I got from Meredith Rohde at Beadalon. So I get asked a lot about the needle threading. And I'm going to just show you guys what she emailed me about. You can take your chain nose pliers. And when I showed this last time, I was pulling. Don't pull, just use the chain nose pliers to flatten it. Just hold it like that. So don't pull the thread, because that will actually, somebody in the last class mentioned that it kind of turned white. That's if you do that pulling action with the chain nose pliers. If you just flatten it, it should go through, I think Meredith said it would go through a size 13 needle, no problem. I'm using a size 10. Okay, there we go. Totally works. So that, I wish I had introduced that earlier. I was teaching it like pulling the chain nose pliers, so that saves a lot of time. All right, so step 1, we're going to pick up 5 Superduo beads. Again, it could be any color. I'm using the Crystal Magic Blue. So get 5 Superduo beads on your needle and leave about a 7-inch tail. And go back through all the beads again. Okay. And then go back through that first one more time. And pull tight. You get a little star there. And so that is step one. The next thing you'll want to do is turn and go through the top hole of that first Superduo. And now we're going to pick up a new color. So I'm going to bring over this metallic slated purple. Those there. And we're going to pick up two. Let's see. There we go. And go through the top hole of the next Superduo. So yeah, really similar to what we did last week. And just go all the way around. And as I was making the samples in this color earlier, I had an earring idea. I didn't get a sample made of the earring, but when we get to that spot, I'm going to show you guys. And you'll be like, oh, yeah, I can do that. So one more set of two. And go through the top hole of the next Superduo. Go ahead and continue through the bottom hole of some of those first ones we added in this ring. So they let me go through one. So I've gone through that one. Okay. And I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit. I'm going to go through a few more. Just going around the ring here. The instructions don't say to do a double ring, but I kind of leave that up to the creator. If your tension is really tight and it needs it, or it doesn't need it, then skip it. If you think it needs it, go ahead and go through them all. And sorry about that noise out there, guys. There's a, I don't know if you can hear, but they're working on my street. It's being repaved, and which is good. We're really glad that was done when it starts to snow. Okay, so now I'm coming back to the first Superduo that I'd added in that row. And I went through all of them again. So it's really tight, the tension's perfect. I turn and go through the top hole of that Superduo bead. Okay. And I'm gonna stick with this weighted purple for this one, for this next row, but you can change the color if you want to. And so for the next row, we just need to pick up one Superduo bead. So just one. And go through the next bead. We're going to do that all the way around. Oops, there we go. Okay. And going through one more here. I'm chasing these around the mat. These little suede ones are, they're so pretty. I love these colors. And just out of curiosity, what colors is everyone working on today? I always love to see when people post at the after the classes the colors that they've chosen. So many gorgeous ideas out there. Go around. Okay, so I got back to the first one. I'm going to go through the bottom hole of the next one. And it's pretty tight. I feel like it's good. And given the next step that I'm going to be doing, I know I'm going to be weaving in. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here and set it aside. Now we're going to make another piece just like that. But our next piece is not going to have that outer ring of just single superduos. It's just going to be the 5 in the center and then the ring of 2 around it. So I'm getting some more thread. And this one can be shorter because we're not going to use it for much. We're just going to create that 2 simple circles. So I only cut about, I think I cut maybe 21 or 22 inches or so. And another size 10 beading needle. And I'm going to show that trick again. It's so magic. Just take your pliers. Chain nose will do, flat nose, whatever you've got in front of you is fine. And without pulling, I'm just flattening it. Just flattening the thread. There we go. Wow. See, when I was pulling it with my fingernails, I was actually making the thread not hold its shape. And so when you're putting the chain nose pliers, you're flattening it without moving any mass, if that makes any sense. And so when you do that, it's almost too flimsy to go through the needle, so it makes it worse. The chain nose pliers method is just perfect. So there it is, like that. All right, so put 5 beads on the needle. Okay, there's 5. 7-inch tail, about that much or so. Go through all the beads again. Okay, and pull tight. And I'm going to go through them all an additional time until I get back to my first one. So there's one. Okay, and here we go. All right, so there's 5 through the center hole into a star shape. Turn and go through the top hole of that last bead that your thread is exiting. Oops, I caught my bracelet. There it is. Okay, pull through there. Okay, and then pick up 2 Superduo beads. Go through the top hole of the next Superduo. There we go. And 2 more. Do the next one. There we go. Go through the next one. And just help those guys sit. There we go. We're almost to the part where I get to show you guys the earring idea. It's 2 more. All right, so going back through the next. So here's what the step next I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and weave in my tail and working threads so that this is just one standalone piece. I'm going to go through a few more beads here. One more here. They seem just a little bit loose, so I'm going around a few more until it's tighter. There we go. And keep going through there.
Hi, Danielle, it's Carmi.
Hey.
In answer to your question about what colors are people using, we've got someone using black gold with a red seed bead.
Beautiful.
We've got turquoise and metallic suede. Someone's using suede blue and rusty red. So there will be some really interesting color combinations coming out.
Oh, I can't wait to see. That sounds beautiful, guys.
Yep, and someone just posted they're using pinks.
Ooh, gorgeous. Yeah, all really lovely colors. And what I'm doing here is I've just flattened the tail thread on this one, and I'm threading a needle on the cut. Going through there. Cool. All right. And so to weave in your thread, I'm starting with the center, because when I weave in the outer thread, it'll tighten the outside and it may make it more difficult for me to weave in the beginning thread, the tail that's at the center. So I'm going to weave in the center first. And figuring out where I'm exiting from this one. So I'm going to turn, go through the top hole here. And I'm going to go through the next bead that's there. And I'm crossing my working thread at this point. So I see my working thread going that way, and I'm going this way. So I'm going to tie a half-hitch knot here. So coming underneath the thread with my needle. Pull through. And go through one loop. Pull tight. And just go through one more, repeat that, and you can trim. So coming underneath the threads here. And I'm trying to stay, in between the beads that I started, so I don't have any thread overhanging the bead. Going through the next bead after where I tied the knot. And I'm going to trim the tail. And set that aside. So the same thing here. I tie a half-hitch knot here. Pull in the loop, go through the loop, and pull. Go through one more. And go under the thread. Go through that loop and pull. I'm going through one more bead, maybe two, depends. There we go. 1 through 2. And going to trim that. Oh, all my beads are scattered here. There we go. Okay. When I trim threads, I'm pushing down with the scissors a little bit and pulling up with the thread. All right, so there's that half. Now you remember the first piece we made. First thing I'm going to do with that is weave in the tail of that. So a little bit of redundant stuff here, but I'll do it really fast. Okay. It's probably not visible on the camera, but you can see how flat that got when I used the pliers. There we go. Okay, again, so tail thread here. I'm exiting from here, just checking that. Going through one more. One more here. Turn. Up through the next one. I'm going to turn again, go through this one. Tighten that. Do one. Go through. One more loop here. And trim that. Okay. Actually, I missed a little bit of that trimming. I'm gonna do a little better job here. Okay. Fun part. So what we have here are two sections, and to connect them, we're going to stitch through each of these V's as if we're adding the single bead from the last step. So as you remember from when we built this one, the next step was to add a single bead, single Superduo bead in between each one around. And what we're going to do here is the same thing. We're just going to stitch each of those ones into those. So like a wheel. But before I do that, check out this earring. Wouldn't that be cute? We could connect. You'd need to connect it in more than just that spot. So you'd connect through here and then maybe put a 10 in between here and in between here. If there's a 10 here, I'll definitely be posting this, so no worries there, but a 10 and a 10. Use either a wire guard here or a loop of seed beads. And then you could put a charm down here with another little loop around this bottom one. And it'd be like little circles. So just an idea there, but we're gonna go ahead and make a button. So going through the first one here. And pull tight. And now I'm going to go through the next one on the other piece. I think. There we go. So that's connected. And so the next one I want to go through is here. And then this one. Now it's going to start to fold over on itself. So now I want to put this bead through to this bead. And what we should get is, and it's not quite making a dome shape yet because I haven't tightened it, but what you'll see is the connection starting to form here. Looking very much like this one. All right, so now the next thing to do is just keeping track of which bead you're exiting and which bead you're going into. So I'm exiting out of the main, so I'm gonna go into the top. Nope, sorry, it jumped. Okay. Now going back through the next bead on the main. Okay, through the top. And just all the way around. So this Superduo bead it's the join bead that it takes the place of the 6s that we used in the Puffy Star pendant. And so it gives you just a little different shape. It makes it possible to make it round or perfectly round looking, but with that star in the center. So it'll still kind of have a point. You'll see when I get to that part. And all I'm doing is just connecting each open Superduo on the one side to the other. There we go. Into here. Almost to the last, actually this is the last one right here. And there we go. And now it'll start to dome. And I'll go around it one more time. I'm just going to do that really fast, but all I'm doing here is going through the same path again, just tightening it up. And so once you've got this done, I'm going to tie the ends off in the same way that we tied off the last 3 threads. And then we'll quickly start the bracelet. Looks like we're doing good on time. We're exactly at the half hour, so I was hoping. Okay. Just a couple more and I'll be all the way around again. One more. And so if you see any gaps and you want to keep going, you can keep going around. If you want to fill in over here again, just do a turn. And you can do that. But I'm happy with how this one looks. So I'm going to go ahead and knot. I'm going to come underneath all the threads and pull through and go through the hoop. And go through one more. Or 2 more there. And then go underneath the threads. Pull a small loop, go through that loop, tighten. And remember which direction I was going here. There we go. Okay. And trim. So there's our buttons. So lots of design potential there. And you could do a lot with these. They don't have to be made into buttons like we're going to use them. It could be so many things. So just a little something for your toolbox. They look like rondelles to me. I'm going to switch to the bracelet now. So the bracelet pattern is herringbone stitch. Super simple, regular herringbone stitch. It has 8 columns, or sorry, 8 beads, which is 4 columns wide. And this kind of diagonal stripe pattern that I did with the Superduos is achieved by adding a Superduo one on top of the other, spaced by beads. And as you're working, it'll naturally happen as a pattern if you just always put a seed bead on top of a Superduo and alternate your colors. Do that every time you're building each of the columns. And as every row is built, you'll see, we'll go through and I'll show you guys what I mean about that. So I'm going to start with some size 8 seed beads. And I still have my 2 colors of Superduos out. I might need a few more of these though, so I'm going to get some more of these. And so for anyone not familiar with starting herringbone, it starts with a ladder stitch. And here's what a ladder stitch looks like. You'll pick up 2 size 8 beads. And you can go down to, I don't know, I think in the directions it says to leave about an 18-inch tail because we're going to use that tail to weave on the button. So I'm going to stick with that. I'm using my bead mat to measure them. So 2 beads on the needle, sorry, on the thread, then 18-inch tail. Turn and go back through the first one that we added and pull. And with any luck, they'll sit next to each other like that. If they don't, just kind of reposition them until they do. Kind of side by side. Go back through the second one. And so you'll see we're going in kind of a circular pattern. I hold them with my thumb and finger to get them not to shift out of shape when I'm doing my ladder stitches. I do that for herringbone and when I'm starting brick stitch, the same thing, kind of pinching them like that. Pick up another bead, go back through that last bead we added. And pull tight. So now you see we have 3. You want to turn and go through that last bead we added. I think I'm going to just kind of move these a little bit. There we go. So I've got 3 on there so far, and they're a little wonky. I'm going to take the tail really quick, and I'm going to put it back through. This is optional, but I'm just going to put it back through the middle bead here and pull. I'm just making it a little tighter now. Okay, so same thing we did before. I picked up a size 8 bead, going through the last bead we added, pull, turn, go back up through that bead, and pull tight. So there's 4, we need 8. So I'm gonna go 1 more. You're always changing directions. So see my thread's exiting this way. So now I'm gonna go through this way. Always going in the opposite direction of where the thread is exiting. Down through the second one. Here's bead number 6. And bead number 7. And the last one. Oops. So there's the first row. I'm going to tighten this up by going back through all the beads again. So I'm going to turn and go through that one. And turn and go through this one. This step is optional. It's if you think you need it. Sometimes like I ladder and it's so nice that I don't bother, and other times I feel like let me go back through all these. Okay. One more. Okay. And so when we attach the button later, I'm going to want the tail thread to be in a certain place. So I'm putting it back through. I'm doing that without the needle, and this is optional. I'm just getting it out of the way so that I can show you guys what I'm doing without you seeing the tail thread floating there. But I'm pulling the tail thread down, and later that's going to become our button attachment. Okay, so ladder stitching is finished. Now we're going to start herringbone stitch from the bottom. So the first bead I'm going to add is actually going to be a Superduo bead. And pick up the Superduo bead, slide it down, go through the top hole of that same bead, and then come down through the next bead. So I'm going to stop once I do that and show you. So ignore that tail thread. This is the working thread exiting here, going up through Superduo, coming down through there. I'm going to pull, and it should sit right on the top. And turn and go up to the next one. There we go. And now I'm just going to add 8s through the end of this row. So turning and adding 8s here. And that way. Go down to the next, come up. So same thing as before, but with 2 size 8 seed beads instead of the Superduo. There's one more here. Coming up, and the last one here. Okay, so now we want to be exiting from this bead going in that direction. So we're going to do a turn. Some people on herringbone will weave around. I actually like to just turn, and the thread will show on the side. But what I find with finished pieces that are made with a turn is they're a little bit, I don't know, they kind of tend to curve in on themselves like this when you've done the turn. If you do with the thread showing on the side like this, it's really supple. You can spin them. So this is just my preference. It's by no means the only way to do it. Lots of other great beaders out there do a turn. Some will pick up the bridge underneath to do that turn. My way is I just bring the thread on the side. Okay, so the next part we're going to do, built row 2, is we're going to build row 3. And row 3 is going to have 8, 8, Superduo, and then 8. So I'm just going to really quickly throw those 8s on there. So to build the next row, you just go through the 1 bead in row 2 there. And pull tight, turn, come back up through that 3rd bead here. And pick up 2 more. I like to help the beads sit because they're going to tend to, you know, kind of stack a little bit when you pull your thread through, especially in these first few rows. I always just help them. Coming up through the next bead. And this is where I'm supposed to add a Superduo. See, I was almost going to add 8s, I forgot. So I'm going to add a Superduo here. Turn and go through the other hole of the Superduo, down through the next bead, and pull. And that should sit nicely right there. I'm going to turn and go up through here. This is the next Superduo bead that I'm using to turn and go through. And pick up 2 more 8s, come down through that Superduo. And there you go. Now, same as before, I'm going to turn and just go through that top bead. And it's totally fine to do that. No one can even see that thread on the side. I bet earlier when you guys were looking, you did not notice that thread. You'll see it now, but especially since they're dark Superduos, and the turns are always, the thread is showing on top of the Superduo, not the amethyst 8. So that's also handy. So now I have Superduo and 8s, and remember our pattern always has 8 Superduo, 8 Superduo. I'm switching to a new color. This is the Crystal Magic Blue, and adding that as my next start for row 4 here. And then we're going to turn and go through the Superduo from row 3. And that tightened these up. It's also something really good there. And 8s. Okay. And now, so you see in the pattern how we have this diagonal coming up. So I know my next bead should be a Superduo. So I'm going to pick up another Superduo bead, and it's going to be my first color. Oh, I forgot to turn. Sorry, I'm going to take that Superduo bead off and finish my herringbone turn here. I didn't do that. There we go. And now picking up that Superduo again, going through the other side of it and down through the next bead. And come up. And now it will just be another set of 8s. And here's one spot where you will see my thread against an 8. Okay. So you see it looks just like this one. I added 4, that's my 4th one right here. So my next turn, I would add a Superduo, 8, a color B Superduo, 8. And if you look at the PDF, while you're building your bracelet, you can follow along with this pattern, and it might help while you're getting going, and just seeing it illustrated sometimes helps me. And so we're about 3:42. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly demo putting the button on. And then if we get time, I'll come back to this and put the button on this one again, because I think that's the one where people are going to have questions. So bringing my finished sample over here. This is the bottom where we started. And this is the top where we're going to have our loop. I'm going to show you guys adding thread on that part. So let's get the button on there. I have a spare needle here. I'm going to switch it off this thread. Okay. I believe I already flattened this, so it should thread pretty well, but hoping anyway. There we go. All right. So I need to be exiting from one of the center here. Now notice that because it's an even, there's no single bead in the center. So either this one or this one will do. I'm just going to go through these beads like this, going down this one, up through the next one. And now I need a size 6 seed bead. And this is just regular AB amethyst. I'm grabbing it from this tube here. Amethyst, pick up 6. And so here's a finished one. You're going to leave some room. You're creating kind of like a button shank here. I have 5. It's up to you. 3 is the minimum I would do. 5 is probably the most I would do. And now you're going to need some 10s. So this is the, it's like an iris brown color, size 10. If you have 11s and you want to use 11s, go for it. Use 5 11s in the stack. But I like to use the 10s just because they're a little easier to see on camera. So I'm going to put 5 on here. And now choose a button, whichever one you like. So we're going to go through the center here. And we're going to exit from the center at the top. So just, if you've got it exiting the center, and you went through the center, you've got it. Bring it down. Just sit right there. And now to get it to, we're going to have to turn. Do you remember how there's a thread in between each of these spokes of the star here? We're going to use those threads to turn. So I'm going to go down this way and then exit back to the center and pull. So that's pretty tight already. I'm going to go through all of the size 10s, all 5 of those, through the 6, pull through there. And now, so you were exiting from one side, I'm going to go through the other middle bead. So that center column here. And you'll see that size 6 will move over just a little, and it'll kind of sit in between those two in a perfect center. And so this is all just reinforcing now. To reinforce, I'm going to turn, go back through the last bead here, all 5 of those 10s, through the center, out the center. And then use one of the threads in between the star here to catch. Come out the center of the bottom and go through all 5 of those beads again. And exit here. Same thing again, I'm going to loop around. And come up through the top and through the center. I'm going to do this one more time, and then I'm going to weave in. So through the center here, up around, down through all 5. Okay, all right. And it's really tight. The button's on there really nicely. So go ahead and go through your beads here continue through the one above it if you'd like. At this point, it's just weaving in, following an existing thread path. And if you guys remember from some of my other classes, on a project like this one where I have lots of real estate to weave into, I probably won't not. I'll probably just weave through. So I'm just going through beads, just turning. Following the same stitch path that I did before when I was building the bracelet. Go down through this bead, through the Superduo. There's no you know, set recipe for this. It's just, I think there's a suggested thread path in the handout that I drew, but you don't have to follow that to a T. You can just go with wherever your needle wants to go. And if you change direction 3 times, you'll have locked in your thread pretty well. Go through one more. Okay, I'm gonna go and trim this. I feel like that's pretty good. I could have done a little bit more of it. I wanna make sure and show you guys the other side. And I wanna show you adding thread. So this thread, it's not too short, but I wanted to give you the idea of adding a new one. So I'm gonna cut a new string here. It's gonna be one of those classes where we're right up against the wire for time. Let's see. Okay, here's a needle. Flatten the new thread that I just cut. And I come up through here. Try to thread it. Oh, perfect. Whew, look at that. Thank you, Meredith. Thank you. That's very good. Okay. I'm going to weave in by just the same as we did before. I'm going to come in the work. Anywhere will be fine. I'm trying to enter at a place where I'll be headed in this direction. So just coming in through here, turn, go up. And this tail can be short because we're going to trim it as soon as it stops moving. So coming down and go down through here. I find the Superduos, they add a lot of stability to the work. So when weaving in, it tends to get tighter sooner. See, already this thread isn't moving when I pull. So yeah, it's really nicely. And my goal is to get to the point that my working thread left off and weave in at that point. So here, going this direction. One more Superduo. Coming down through that same Superduo bead, but on the other side. And then turn. And I'm going to just keep going up. Oops. I got through the bead above it, not the same bead. Sorry guys, I went through the same bead. So I'm exiting that Superduo and I'm going to go up. And up. Okay, there's that. So I trim that tiny tail that I have here. This is the old working thread, and we would just weave that in the same way. I'm going to skip that for now so I can have time to show you the loop. But so the top of the bracelet, we want to make it symmetrical so that it will look like the bottom does. So you want to kind of end our stack to look the same way. And to do that, what you'll want to do is, I've kind of started already to do that. I've got 2 here. So I'll bring this over and show you. I've got these 2 done. And I've ended that row. And I've got, let's see, this one done. So now I'm starting this row. I'm going to have 8, 8, another purple, and another 8. So let me just get through that really quick. So as you get to the end of your bracelet, you'll begin to start stacking 8s on top of 8s so that it matches that bottom part. So there's another 8. And I move this because it's making just a little bit of glare, I think. Yeah, it's changing the color. Okay, coming up through the next 8 in the last row there. And I'm going to pick up a purple Superduo. And go down. And add an 8. And I do flip my work. I've noticed I do that. At the end of my rows, I'm turning them. Okay, and so we're going to need to have another purple Superduo. And this is our last Superduo for the bracelet. Pick that up. Slide that down. I'm just going to finish with 8s. I'm going at speed here so I can show you the end. But yeah, this is kind of it was our pinnacle project of all the Superduos. We started with, I think, a pretty quick earring. And then, you know, a more involved necklace, which became a bracelet. And then that really cool puppy star pendant from last week. And then there's this one, and this one is the project that I think takes the longest by a margin. All right, and so what you're seeing here is the pattern is just going to be all 8s now, and so I'll build another row of 8, and 8, and 8, and 8, all the way across. So I'm going to add one more row. I'm not going to get to add, actually that is the last row. Come to think of it, there's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see how we're doing over here. Yeah, so 2, 3, and 4. So this is our last row. Right, just in the nick of time here. Okay. Yeah, okay. Yay. Bracelet finished. Side. Doing that turn. Come up through the beads. Okay, and so now we want to create the loop. I'm just going to really quickly show you guys that. You'll come around with, I'm using size 10s. I would say if you're using size 11s, just kind of test it. I used 23 size 10 beads. So 23 is what seemed the best for me to get my button through. What you can do is build your loop and then test your button. So I've got 11, there's 11. And 11 more. So there's 22, and one more. And there we go. So now I'm just going to go down through here on the other side. And I'm going to test my button to make sure it fits. Get this out right here. So pinch it right here so that it stays tight. Bring your button around and make sure it fits. If you feel like it's tight, add more beads. And I'm thinking, in my case, 2 more beads would be more comfortable. So I'm going to come back out here and add 2 more. Okay, so to get to over here, all you're going to want to do is come down through here. Now this is where we're going to do a classic herringbone turn. Do you see this stitch here? You can use it to turn. You could also just continue down to where we last did a turn here and then just come up, which is I think what I say to do in the instructions. But the alternative is you could just come under the thread bridge. It's a little advanced trick. And use that as a way to turn. And then just come up through all the beads. Okay, so we're down to about 2 minutes here. I'm going to go ahead and do is, since we showed in weaving in before, I would just advise referring back to earlier when we did our weaving in. What you'd want to do here is go through the Superduo and turn, or you could alternatively, you know, pick up there is a little bit of thread on top of that Superduo. You could pick up that thread and use it to turn and go up. So go ahead and reinforce that 2 more times and then weave into the work following the existing thread path, changing direction 2 or 3 times, and then trim. And ignoring all these crazy threads, you've got a bracelet. And it fits great and it's fun to wear. It's unique and different. So I'm going to switch back to my camera really quick.
Hi, Danielle, it's Carmi.
Hey.
I just want to let you know that on the sidebar, you're getting some wonderful compliments. People really appreciate this class. We know it's an intermediate level, so it was probably going to be a little bit harder for some people, but we're going to encourage them to try it. But your kudos on teaching, and you're getting, if you get a chance to glance over at the sidebar, people really enjoyed this class. And the class is a big hit.
Yay. Well, thank you guys. I'm really glad. It's really fun. And I'm grateful that I get to be here with you guys teaching my favorite thing to do. So I'd love to see what everyone creates at home. Do we have time? I know we're over time now, but do we have time to quickly look at October? I can just hold it up.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So starting next week, and apologies, I don't have the second class on here yet because I'm working on it downstairs. I was so close. But I have next week's project right here, which is these beaded cup chain bangles. They're like bangle bracelets, and they're so fun. You can make them any size you want. You can also make them with a clasp if you prefer. And I made this one a little tight, I think. But yeah, so this is going to be a really fun class. And then we're going to do the design your own Miyuki Delica necklaces, which could also be earrings. That's the class after that. Then after that, we're going to do these mandala earrings, little starflower mandalas. And then we will finish Halloween week with a really fun peyote stitch chain variation that it is so customizable. You can make it a bracelet. It can be almost anything, but I put 3 charms. You could put a single pendant. You could put charms all the way around, and I'll show you guys how to do that. And it uses some delicas in there too for some sparkle. I've got some little silk delicas in there. So yeah, hopefully by next week I'll have even more to show you. I'll have a bunch of the pendant too. So yeah, can't wait to see everyone's button bracelets, and thank you so much for joining class with us tonight. So on behalf of Michaels and myself and John Bead, thank you guys. Have a good evening.